The night was one of those when the sky seemed determined to empty every drop of water it held. Rain lashed against the ground, bouncing off the cracked pavement, pouring into gutters already overflowing. The small town was nearly deserted, most people tucked away in their homes with hot drinks, thankful they weren't caught outside in the storm. But Daniel was. He adjusted the umbrella in his hand, trying to keep it steady against the gusts of wind, while his other hand held tightly onto the small fingers of his daughter, Emma. She was 6 years old, her pigtails bouncing as she skipped despite the storm, her pink rain boots splashing in puddles with every step. She was always humming, always curious, and Daniel often thought she carried enough sunshine in her smile to fight even the darkest days. "Daddy, look," she exclaimed, tugging at his sleeve with the urgency only children had. He followed her gaze and saw a figure standing at the bus stop a few yards ahead. The dim, flickering streetlight cast a pale glow over her. A woman, dressed in military fatigues, stood hunched beneath the downpour. Her duffel bag hung heavy on her shoulder, her boots were muddied, and her short brown hair clung to her face. The way she stood, rigid, weary, but proud, told Daniel she wasn't just tired. She was carrying the weight of more than rain. He slowed his pace. His instinct as a father, as someone who knew loneliness intimately, told him she didn't belong out there alone in the storm. "Miss," he called out as he approached, his voice barely rising over the rain. "You'll catch your death out here." The woman turned sharply, eyes flashing as if expecting danger. Her hand twitched near her side, a reflex learned from months, maybe years, of vigilance. But then she saw Emma. The little girl, innocent and fearless, tilted the umbrella slightly toward her. That tiny act of kindness seemed to pierce the soldier's guard. "I don't want to trouble you," she said hoarsely. Her voice carried exhaustion that went deeper than one night. "You're no trouble," Daniel replied firmly. "We live just a few blocks away. Please, come with us." There was a pause. Her eyes studied him, scanning his face for motives the way soldiers must. Finally, she nodded. The walk home was slow. The rain seemed even heavier, but Daniel barely noticed. He kept the umbrella angled to shield both the stranger and his daughter. By the time they reached his modest house, a small, two-bedroom with peeling paint and warm light glowing from the window, all three were soaked. "Inside, quick," Daniel urged, ushering them in. The living room smelled faintly of wood smoke and cinnamon. A single lamp illuminated the cozy space with a golden glow. The contrast to the cold storm outside was immediate, and Daniel saw the soldier's shoulders sag slightly as she stepped onto the worn rug. He handed her a towel. "Here, dry off. I'll make some tea." The woman stood still for a moment, gripping the towel as if she wasn't sure she deserved the comfort. Finally, she began to rub at her hair, muttering a quiet, "Thank you." Emma, always the first to break silence, piped up, "Are you a soldier?" "Like in the movies." The woman looked down, startled by the question, then chuckled faintly. "Yes, my name's Sarah, Sergeant Sarah Hayes." Emma grinned wide. "I knew it. You're strong." "Daddy, she's strong like a superhero." Daniel smiled faintly from the kitchen doorway, watching the way Sarah's lips curved at Emma's words, like she hadn't smiled in a long time and didn't quite remember how. He busied himself making hot tea and reheating leftovers, chicken and rice, nothing fancy, but warm. As he worked, he caught glimpses of Sarah. She scanned the room as if memorizing exits. She sat stiffly on the couch, but her eyes softened each time Emma spoke. Dinner was a quiet affair at first. Sarah ate slowly, almost like she was rationing food out of habit. Eventually, she began to share pieces of her story. She had just returned from deployment overseas. Her unit had been through rough times, though she didn't give details. She admitted there had been no one waiting for her when she arrived back at the base. No parents, no siblings, no partner. Just silence. "So I caught the bus," she finished quietly, staring into her tea. "Didn't really know where to go." Emma's small hand reached across the table and rested on Sarah's. "We're glad you came to our house." That simple statement hit harder than any grand speech. Sarah blinked rapidly, her throat tightening. Later that evening, Daniel showed her the guest room. "It's not much, but it's warm. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." Sarah hesitated. I can't take your space." "You're not taking it," Daniel assured her. "You're using it. That's different." For a moment, their eyes held. She saw no pity there, only sincerity. Finally, she nodded. As the house settled into night, Sarah lay in the small guest bed. For the first time in months, she didn't hear distant gunfire in her dreams. Instead, she drifted off to the sound of Daniel reading a bedtime story to Emma through the thin wall. His deep, steady voice, Emma's soft giggles, it was the lullaby of a home, something Sarah had almost forgotten existed. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink into her bones. It had been just a chance encounter in the rain, but something about this night told her, it wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something she had been missing all along. The days after Sarah's arrival blurred into a rhythm none of them had expected. What was meant to be one night of kindness stretched into a week, then two. Daniel didn't mind. He liked the extra laughter in the house. Emma adored Sarah, trailing her like a shadow, eager to learn anything about being a soldier. And Sarah, well, she had begun to feel something she hadn't in years, home. She woke each morning to the smell of coffee brewing and Emma's cheerful chatter about school. She helped pack lunches, fixed the loose handle on the back door, and even taught Daniel how to make an omelet that wasn't burnt on one side. Slowly, the heaviness she had carried from deployment began to ease. Still, the nights were hard. Sometimes she woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding, eyes searching the dark for threats that weren't there. But each time, the sound of Emma's soft breathing down the hall and Daniel's quiet presence reminded her she wasn't alone. One crisp autumn evening, they sat together on the porch. Leaves fluttered down in shades of amber and red, and the air smelled of pine smoke from neighbors' chimneys. Emma was inside coloring, humming to herself. Sarah wrapped her hands around a mug of tea, staring at the fading sky. "I thought I'd lost myself out there," she said suddenly. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. "War, it takes more than it gives. I came back, but part of me stayed behind. I didn't think I'd ever feel normal again." Daniel turned to her. His expression wasn't pity, just quiet understanding. "You are normal, Sarah. What you went through, anyone would carry scars. But here, you don't have to fight. You can just be." She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "You don't know what that means to me." Before he could reply, Emma burst through the door holding a crayon drawing. "Look," she cried proudly. On the paper were 3 stick figures, one tall with brown hair, one smaller with yellow pigtails, and one in a soldier's uniform. Above them was a bright sun and a rainbow. Beneath, Emma had written in shaky letters, "My family." Sarah's breath caught, her throat closed, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Daniel's gaze softened, and he reached out, brushing his fingers gently over the paper. "Looks like Emma's decided for us," he said quietly. That night, Sarah lay awake long after the house went quiet. The word, family, echoed in her mind. She had lived years without belonging to anyone. And now, in this little home with peeling paint and warm laughter, she felt more wanted than she ever had. But peace never stayed for long. A week later, the first snow of the season drifted down, blanketing the town in white. Emma pressed her nose against the window, squealing with delight. "Snow. Daddy, Sarah, look, it's snowing." Daniel laughed, pulling on his coat to fetch firewood. Sarah joined Emma by the window, smiling faintly. "Where I was stationed," she murmured, "we never saw snow. Just endless sand and heat." Before Emma could ask more, a sharp knock rattled the front door. Daniel returned, frowning. Rarely did visitors come this late. He opened the door cautiously. 2 men stood on the porch, their uniforms crisp despite the snowflakes gathering on their shoulders. Their expressions were serious, official. "Sergeant Sarah Hayes," one of them asked. Sarah's stomach dropped. She stepped forward, her breath catching. "Yes." The taller officer nodded. "We're sorry to disturb you, ma'am, but you've been recalled. Your unit requires your immediate return. Transport leaves in 48 hours. The words hit like a thunderclap. Emma gasped, clutching Sarah's hand tightly. "But you can't go. You live here now. You belong with us." Sarah knelt, her heart breaking at the tears streaming down Emma's face. She cupped the child's cheeks gently. "Sweet pea, I don't want to leave you. You've given me more joy than I ever thought I'd have again. But being a soldier means sometimes I don't get to choose." Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to shut the door and pretend the knock had never come. But he knew. Duty was not something one could run from. When the officers left, silence fell heavy in the house. Sarah sat on the couch, her duffel bag already seeming to loom in the corner as though mocking her. Daniel stood nearby, torn between anger and sorrow. "I wish," she whispered, staring at the floor. "I wish I could stay. I never thought I'd find people worth coming home to, and now I have to leave them." Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Then promise you'll come back. No matter how long it takes. We'll be here. This is your home now, too." Her eyes met his, shimmering with tears. "Do you really mean that?" "With everything I have," he said. That night was a blur of packing and unspoken words. When Sarah hugged Emma goodbye, the little girl clung to her desperately. "Don't go forever," Emma sobbed. Sarah kissed her forehead, tears falling freely. "I'll do everything in my power to come back. And when I do, we'll draw more pictures together, okay?" Emma nodded, hiccuping, and then whispered two words that cut through the soldier's armor more than any battle ever had. "Come home." Those words followed Sarah onto the bus, across the ocean, into the desert. Through every sleepless night, every mission, every moment she wanted to give up, she heard Emma's voice. "Come home." Months passed. Letters were scarce. The house felt emptier without Sarah, but Daniel and Emma kept her alive in stories, in drawings pinned to the fridge, in prayers whispered before bed. And then, one spring evening, another knock came. This time, it wasn't officers. It was Sarah. She stood at the door, weary, her uniform wrinkled, a scar running along her arm. But her eyes were alive again. Emma screamed with joy, throwing herself into Sarah's arms. Daniel stood in the doorway, his throat too tight for words, until finally he whispered, "Welcome home." Sarah smiled through her tears, holding them both close. For the first time in years, she wasn't just Sergeant Hayes. She was Sarah, daughter, soldier, friend. And now, part of a family. And this time, she knew she was home for good.